and welcome to a special episode of Tiki Man and the Viking. We talked to Suzanne Lambden. She will return in the next podcast. And welcome to Tiki Man and the Viking podcast. Yes, Tiki Man.
I'm H.B. Burlow, the historical fiction author of the Wichita Chronicles series, with the forthcoming Volume 2, The End of the Treachery, coming out December 9th of this year, and he is the Viking.
I am the Viking. I am William Bryan Johnson, author of Hell to Pay and The Dark Cry of Aristid. And coming soon, Middle-Aged Man in a Trash Can.
Woo-hoo. Excited to talk about that further.
We will talk about it further. But hey, we got a special guest today.
Special guest, Tracy Edingfield, is with us. Let's tell you a little bit about Tracy. After practicing divorce law for 20 years, she was ready to change careers to something a little bit more rewarding and less toxic. She wrote her first novel, Alex and the Immortals. This was accomplished bit by bit in the evenings after putting the children to bed. Can't do it while they're up. Eventually, she retired from law to become a full-time writer. Well, there's a great deal of writing for lawyers to do. The stylistic changes to prose writing did not come easily for her. It took a few years of constantly refining the writing process before she felt she had struck the right balance of being informative and entertaining. To her delight, she discovered writing in one genre gave her a fresh outlook for writing in another area. Writing for children is difficult. Writing for adults is also challenging. There are overlaps, of course, but each holds unique qualities that should be respected. Tracy Edingfield writes historical romance. She also writes children's sci-fi fantasy under the pen name of Tracy Dunn. Tracy, this is going to be interesting. Welcome.
Yeah,
Hi,
welcome.
thank you for having me today.
I just want to find out, okay, we already have got the intro. The transition from what seems to be the very organized, precise profession of being a lawyer to the openness of being a writer. What was that like?
Well, that's a good question, but I remember back in law school, you read probably 300 pages a day. And case law is really just stories. Stories of someone who's been hurt or someone who's seeking some kind of a remedy. And those stories I found to be very interesting. And the best part for me of practicing law was meeting my clients initially and learning their stories. And then as you segue into a writer, hey, it's all about stories, right?
And human interest.
Absolutely, yes.
And so that's, to me, a natural progression. It may not seem rational to people. It may seem schizophrenic, but I have enjoyed the stories that people tell. And now running for office, and I'm out meeting people every day, people that have a different viewpoint, a different background, and a different story. And I love hearing those stories. And I love helping people. That's why I went into law. That's why I became a writer. And I think that's why I'm going to be a good lawmaker.
Now, you referenced the toxic environment of the law.
Yes.
Do you find it less so in the writing field?
Yes. Writers collaborate. They encourage each other. In law school, I'm not proud of this particular aspect of law school, but there were times when people would hide the books that you needed to write a paper. And I learned in med school, they don't do that. They actually help each other finish researching. But in law school, it's such a competitive environment that there were some real dick moves being pulled on that, I should say.
That's physiological when you're talking about the medical field.
Yes.
That's fine. Yeah, I get that. What aspects of being a lawyer translated over to being a writer? What tools from being a lawyer did you use to develop becoming a writer?
Well, there's 3 years of law school that train your brain how to think in a logical progression. And that when you sit down to write a brief, for instance, or if you're going to present a trial, you have to start at the beginning and then work your way through it in a logical chain of events. Otherwise, the jury may not follow you or the appellate judges may be lost. So you have to be very disciplined in how you approach getting from point A to point B. And as a novelist, that's how too. I mean, I really loved Quentin Tarantino's
Pulp
Pulp
Fiction.
Fiction because
Circular storytelling.
it didn't follow that progression. It was a chronological skits, but he had the story, and when you go back and you look at it in different parts, there was a progression there. He just cut and paste and then reordered it.
Yeah, you started 3/4 through the story, and then everything goes back, tells the story, and then everything kind of forms this massive storyline at the end of it.
Yeah, but he started with going from point A to B, and then he changed it around, as you said, looping it around. And I find that the practice of law forces you to have that discipline. And then Quentin Tarantino's interpretation of that just kind of flipped it on its head.
Would that make you a plotter more than a pantser?
Well, I think I do a little bit of both.
Okay, you're a hybrid. Okay.
I think everybody's a hybrid to a point.
Everyone who says that they're a pantser, I'm like, yeah, but do you know how your story ends? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, then you're not a pantser.
You've got some plot into this.
You're some plotting there, yeah. You know how you're going to get to the end.
What was your first book?
Alex and the Immortals. It's a middle grade book, and I read it under the pseudonym of Tracy Dunn. And I learned all about Greek mythology and outer space, and it's really about how the kids from Kansas save the world from becoming enslaved. And we've done it before, and we can do it again.
What sparked you to write that?
I got to tell you, it was the Harry Potter series. I devoured that. My kids were at the age, they were starting to read it, and I wanted to see what they were reading. I read the entire series, went back and read it all over again.
Oh, my gosh.
I just loved it. Now, I've fallen out of love with R.K. Rowling since then because of her transgender statements, but the writing in itself is very solid.
And it's important to separate the writer from the writing, especially if you can, as a writer, take something from the finished product.
And it's just kind of humbling for us all to remember that her biggest lesson there is, Muggles are not mudblood. And I believe they had this study where they showed the kids who grew up reading Harry Potter were more accepting, more tolerant, more socially amiable to everybody in society and not as prejudiced. So her gift really inspired a lot more people, and I take that as a greater impact than what she's now devolved into.
Yeah. Did you do anything else with this storyline, or was it just kind of a one and done?
No, it's actually, I plan it to be a trilogy. I've written the first 2 books, and I haven't gone back to write the 3rd book yet.
Okay.
But that is on my to-do list for next year of 2025.
Oh, excellent. And you also was a children's writer.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. Different skill set, you think, for writing for children versus writing for middle school?
I think the vocabulary has to be culled down
Okay.
when you're writing for small children, but it has to be just as interesting, and the story has to be just as tightly woven, because you can't fool little kids.
Yeah. Oh, no.
And I love that they're honest. And the thing is, you have to approach any writing for children with that same honesty, because they'll see right through it if they sense anyone's being fake.
I taught elementary for 8 years, and yes, children can be some of the most honest, sometimes cruelfully so people you'll ever meet.
But what I'm pleased to hear is that your emphasis is on story, starting with reading torts and briefs and getting people's stories from there. That's the crux of everything, whether it's middle grade children, adult, or anything of that nature. That's the tool set, the skill set, but it's still all about telling a good story. Now, you have written for adults as well?
That's true. I write historical fiction, and I have written one contemporary fiction based on being a lawyer, and that was my first adult novel. It was called The Law Firm of Psycho and Satan. All the stories in it are inspired by true stories. It paints a pretty accurate, realistic picture of what life is like on the other side of the law desk when we're sitting here as lawyers listening to our clients pouring out their troubles. There's not a win in every case.
Right. And sometimes there's a lot of tough love needed.
Yes. It's fun to write those chapters. I took a client or a case in every chapter, and the associate, Cooper Bach, in that story has to figure out how to deal with it, because she's not going to get any help from the husband and wife team she worked for, whom I affectionately refer to as Psycho and Satan.
Now, talk about J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series that inspired you in that direction, but with your law background, was there any thought of being the next Grisham?
No.
Okay.
You see, I know John has made a lot of money, but he only practiced law for like, I think, 5 or 10 years. That's still a newbie lawyer. I'm sure he has firsthand knowledge of some of the things that he writes about, but he's really fluffed it up. I'm not interested in becoming the next John Grisham. Everyone says, write what you know, write what you know. But after 20 years of practicing, primarily in divorce law, I didn't want to write what I knew.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I wanted a break from that.
It was toxic, as you remember from the introduction.
That's true.
Now, your next venture has got some historical precedent. I looked up. You are running for public office.
Right.
Gore Vidal, Norman Mailer, Jack London, James Michener all ran for public office. Tell us what you're running for. Tell us how you got from writer to politician.
Okay, well, I'm in some highfalutin company there. I didn't know that Gore Vidal had run for office, so that's exciting. As a retired lawyer, I have been hounded for years to run for political office because we need more lawmakers in the legislature. Right now, the Supreme Court's overturning law as unconstitutional about every 6 months.
Whoa.
So if you were in class, that's an F grade. That's not good. But I didn't have the support of my husband until this last go around. And when you run for office, you really have to have all hands on deck.
Right.
And so I'm very grateful that Adam was willing to come along with it. But I think he saw how much it meant to me. He's one of these husbands who will build you up and not tear you down. And those are rare. And I just love him to death for that. But I decided to run because I really think I could do the job better than it has been done. I think I care about people. I was appalled during the COVID days how little the Republicans seem to care about our health and whether we lived or died. And there was even a lieutenant governor down in Texas, Daniel Patrick, who was saying, I'm sure the grandparents are going to be okay for the economy if they just go ahead and die. Something like that. Do you remember those days?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The dark days of pre-COVID. Yeah.
And I thought we deserve better than that. And so I find myself on this new venture.
And what office are you running for, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. The House of Representatives here in the state of Kansas for District 90. That's the Bentley, Colwich, North Mays, and Valley Center areas.
And how's the campaign gone so far, too? From your perspective as both a lawyer and a writer, how has the campaign gone so far?
It's almost like marketing.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
It's a lot like marketing. I have been overwhelmed with the amount of generosity from people, giving not only of their time, but of their money, and volunteering to help me out doing just 101 different tasks. The thing that has demoralized me is I don't see the same amount of effort being put in on the Republican side. The people that I know are the Democratic candidates, and they're running for office. They're out knocking on hundreds and hundreds of doors. They're out at the public forum. They're taking questions. They're answering surveys. Surveys can take 4 hours to 45 minutes to complete. And we can have 2 or 3 or 4 in a day. They're out trying to get donations, and they're out doing fundraising events on top of all of the other stuff that they have to do about designing their own material and figuring out how to get the word out, the marketing aspect of it. My opponent, for instance, sent out 6 mailers during the primary season because he wanted to beat another Republican for that primary, and he hasn't done anything yet for the general election, which tells me that A, he's really confident he's going to win, and B, he sees another Republican as more competitive than a Democrat. And as a female and as a lawyer, I find that insulting. I find that that kind of arrogance is what has created this disconnect between our representatives and our constituency. I don't like that. I think a representative should represent. Instead, they've done a lot of ignoring what the voters want and what the constituency needs.
What has done better for you, doing social media or actually going out doing events? Like I remember seeing you at the Valley Center Parade. I'm sure you were probably in the Maze Parade as well. working social media, working the aspects of Facebook and some of that?
I didn't get to go to the Maze Parade because I had popped my hip out of place.
Oh, no.
And so walking 2 or 3 miles was out of the question.
Okay.
But I had planned to be there,
Mhm.
and I tried to send as many flyers as I could out to Maze. I have found the face-to-face interactions to be the most rewarding for me personally.
Mhm.
I love getting on Canva and creating ads and throwing those on the social media posts, but that's not real.
Mhm.
Talking to people, there was a lady in Colwich who was nearly in tears because her property taxes have gone up so much she has no disposable income left, and she may have to sell her house to pay her tax bill. I met another young man in Colwich who has a little baby and a wife. They've just had their property values go up so much that he's having to think about selling their home. Moving to a smaller place really isn't an option because they already live in a small house.
Right.
And they obviously like living in Colwich. It's a beautiful little town. And I don't know what to tell them. They don't have the money to even afford an appraisal to get the PMI insurance off because they're being squeezed on both ends.
Yeah. The house taxes on Sedgwick County have gone up. We moved into Dark about 9 years ago, and we've seen 10 to 12% increases almost every year.
Yeah.
And when we just moved and we were in Midtown Wichita and were there for 25 years, and you would see an increase and then it didn't go up at all the next year.
Mhm.
But then they made up for it.
Yeah.
And then there would be another, and it would just be like nickel and diming and chiseling away at you. Have you contemplated what your life would be like if you win the election and if you're not successful?
Yes, I have. In fact, I do a lot of praying in the car, and I was thinking about that on the way over and asking for some guidance on that. Because returning back to my life where I was a writer, and I was writing full time, is something I really want to do. I love writing, but I feel like I've been called to be a leader at this point in time, and I feel like I could do a better job. I had a 78% acquittal rating when I was a public defender, and the normal rate is around 33%.
Well,
So I'm a very strong advocate, and I get things done, and that's just because I think I'm a mom, and we don't take no for an answer. I mean, I remember waking my youngest son is not a morning person, and I would wake him up, drag him literally by the ankles out of bed, and then put his clothes on him to get him up and into school at time. And it was a near run thing every day. But he always came to school, and I don't think he ever got a tardy.
nice.
Because that's what moms do. We just get it done.
Yeah.
Well, and it seems like your career as a lawyer, and then you were called to write. You decided to make that change. You went into it with efficiency, clarity, and a mission. You've had your success as a writer. You'd like more. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
We're in a writing podcast. But it seems like you were called for this, and it seems like you're going into it with clarity and precision and a mission. So, I mean, the impulse behind your life changes and everything you've done has been consistent. And it's not I'm doing it because I want the fame, or I'm doing it because I want this. It's we all have that sense of it's the time to do it.
Right.
And it really comes across from you when you speak it in those terms.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the fame. I would like to have more money from the writing. I mean,
That would always be nice.
Yeah.
who wouldn't?
Yeah.
If you find out the way
If
to
I
make
get
that
that
work,
secret, I'll send it on.
We'll have you back on.
We'll have her back on another episode. Yeah.
But I think it is important as a community that we all band together and face down threats. And I think it's all important that we show courage. I've been disappointed by the lack of moral courage that I've seen in our society lately. That's not something to aim for. To go through life easy and smooth is really a coward's way to do it. If you're going to take on challenges, there's only one way to do it, and that's all in. And if you're not into it all in, then you shouldn't be into it. And so I'm not going to waste my time or anyone else's by doing things half measure. That's why when I write a book, I write it until I finish that book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't become distracted on another book until I have finished one. The same thing with running for a public office. I have one opponent to defeat. And I tell people, you can vote for Trump, just vote for me. The difference between a state government and the federal government, that's a huge gap. We need to learn that there's differences because of certain reasons, and we need to know what those reasons are. Community engagement, civic responsibilities and duties, they're not just something you can pick up when it's convenient for you. You need to do this every election cycle. Get yourself informed. There's plenty of resources, and with Google, there's no need for you to not know who your candidates are and not know how you're going to vote.
Right. Yeah, the internet is much more than just for cat videos.
Yeah.
Hey, let's not diss the cat videos.
Well,
We're thinking of starting a channel. And
I understand, but I tell my students, we have this thing called the internet now that you can look up and learn anything, but a lot of you just use it for memes and cat videos. So let's,
Look, when I was growing up, it was the library and the newspaper, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we had ABC, CBS, NBC. We had PBS. That was it. And it was more directed. It wasn't all over the place. There wasn't as much misinformation because it was just coming in with directness and clarity. If you had a final message, how many days are we from the election now?
16.
Yeah,
16.
Early voting starts Monday.
Yes.
If you had a final message to the folks in District 90
Yes.
in Kansas, what would you say to them?
I would say get out and vote, and I would say vote blue down the ballot, because the Republicans have showed you they don't care about you. And if you want them to start caring about you, you need to grab them by the throat and get their attention. And the way to do that is by voting them out. If you want to go back in 2 more years and vote red down ballot, that's fine. But there are lessons to be learned, but you can't learn anything if it's not taught. So I would say vote blue.
All right. And as we were saying, early voting starts Monday at Sedgwick County Extension Office and Reformation Lutheran on 13th Street. Satellite locations will open Tuesday, October 29th, Friday, November 1st, and Saturday, November 2nd.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, joy, and best of luck to you. We
Thank
hope
you.
the best for you.
Get out and vote.
Get out and vote and pick up a book and read a book.
Read a book. We need that.
There you
That's
go.
going to be our new closing.
I think so. Thank you. You gave us a new closing.
All right, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Tiki Man and the Viking Podcast, brought to you by Rumination of Thunder Media. The following intro and outro music was used for this media project. The music Find Them by Alexander Nakrata. Free download from filmmusic.io. License Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International.